So today's podcast is going to be about what most people would think about, and that is how do some people get in business and have operations going? And I just want to talk about, you know, what I think about it based on, the research I've looked up and just observing. Um, and a lot of it has to do with the type of background one tends to have. I've noticed that a lot of things come to be with having some sort of physical location going and having some sort of business going and doing well. A lot of it comes to be from the background, and the bigger it is, the more the background is relevant. It makes sense. It aligns to the path. And if you think about it, with a lot of businesses you may have heard that someone may have started that's doing well, take for Amazon, for instance. Um, if you ever think about how it even started, Bezos was already working a great job. They were already working a great job for a while. And so, money wise, they were all set. And so, either way, the type of job they were doing, it was complicated and stuff like that. And so, in some way, they were kind of businessy like, and they were earning good money already, like I said. So, for the idea to come together, if you ever think about how much money was even dropped, it wasn't a pinch of money. It was quite a chunk of money that was dropped. And then even more money dropped to make it even more bigger. And with a lot of businesses, I've realized that it's exactly the same thing. Most people that start these kinds of businesses, restaurants, already they've been working some sort of job that pays them good enough to have some sort of savings, big savings. They were already making maybe like $50,000+ a year, and they may have been working there for maybe a little over 10 years. And so it's safe to say that, these people were hard workers and earning good. And then after, a little over 10 years, they may have, maybe just a little over $500,000, or maybe a little over a quarter, or a little over half of that saved up already, which is a good chunk of money. And so that already gives a comfort. And so with that comfort comes taking other kinds of steps that they can afford. And, I was thinking about this, and it only makes sense. It only makes sense. And at that point, if you were to even take out a loan, you would still be in a comfortable level to do things. And not only that, but already you've been having some sort of, as far as your mindset goes and how you're wired, you've already been someone that is all about the technicalities of certain things. You were already oriented into something, even in a small way. Even if your job had a small piece of it featured, let's say, even if you worked as a cook at a restaurant, You could have just been working as a cook, as a restaurant, making decent money for X amount of years, earning good, right? You know, you have good credit, you have good, great savings. And so now you want to start a restaurant. You know, you already know the owners. You've been oriented around that. You've been all about that. And so you opening up a restaurant seems to line up to the type of person you've already been anyways. And so it would just kind of make it easy for them. As far as how difficult it seems, it doesn't seem really difficult. It just seems more like a new thrilling chapter. And so that's how you get a restaurant being made. And, you know, if you think about the history of other things and how it comes to be, you know, a lot of people tend to have had a lifestyle that is very connected. You know, you could have been brought up always joining social clubs, and you joined a lot of sports, and, you know, maybe, you know, maybe you did a lot of theater in school and stuff like that. So that means that at some point with that kind of background, you most likely would become an NFL athlete or NBA athlete and stuff like that. Or, you know, if you were around theater the whole time and always acting, then most likely you're going to get someone that is in the acting world. And they're just doing more of it at a bigger scale. And so if you think about it, a lot of history, it just aligns. And so if one thinks about trying to start a business on their own, starting something at a big scale of their own, just out the blue, in my opinion, it'd just be more of a different path. They could make it, but it's just going to be a different path. And so most likely, if they may not succeed with that, because they already have some sort of mindset to start something, they may not succeed with that. So the next thing they start would be what does well and succeeds. And so the background for that would have been that they had the interest, and then they started something relevant, and then they landed into doing this. And that was just at a small scale. And so what I'm mainly talking about also is how things tend to evolve with ending up doing something that somehow does well for you personally. And so a lot of people may be wondering, what can they do for themselves that they can do, that they can succeed at? And they may be thinking about it like it's just very difficult to do. Very difficult to do, and it's going to take a lot of money and time, and they may not have the money, and they may just not even have the credit if they're trying to take out a loan to do these things. But either way, whoever you are listening to this, whoever it could be that wants to do something on their own, doesn't matter how many years it's been and stuff like that. Either way, you still would have had to have been someone that's always thinking about what to do. And then maybe you start fidgeting with something here, and that's not really doing well or doesn't matter to you. And then you evolve to doing something else that's the creative side. And then that may be somewhat interesting, but maybe you leave it. And then you end up, I don't know, jumping into realizing something that you actually want to do. And then you start fidgeting with that. And so as you see, that tends to be the lineage of how certain things tend to be. But then another factor that comes into play tends to be the funding and how you come across this funding, you know, to get to a level, because certain things will take some sort of scale of funding. It could be a very tiny scale, and it could be a very big scale. for instance, if you're just going to try to make some sort of videos on YouTube, and you really want to go to town with that and be successful with that, then obviously, in my opinion, the scale of money put down, in my opinion, is going to be much smaller than if you had a dream to have your own business selling services or products. You know, it's a big, big difference in the money you're going to put down. And so for that person going at that low scale, trying to do something, I mean, they already have the interest. And so it's going to most likely go better for them if they know what they're doing to, at some level, be successful with that. Because the scale is so low and they found that interest. It's just like that right thing where the light bulb goes on and things align. And, you know, if you go to a bigger scale of something, you'd have to figure out a way to get that going, and it becomes even more challenging. And no matter what the path, it's going to take a breakthrough of some sort. A breakthrough could be just that breakthrough of, you know, finding the loan and getting access to it. You know, that could be a little breakthrough for you. A breakthrough could be when you get some sort of high-end paying job that you applied for. And now you're earning money, and then with that little breakthrough, you're saving, and then you're figuring out a way to make another breakthrough. All that takes that also to happen. You need to find that pivotal point where that can happen. And the funding is one of the biggest things, especially if you wonder about, you know, how a business comes into play, whether it's an insurance company, whether it's being some sort of flower shop, gardening store, whether it's you opening up a restaurant, whether it's you opening up a multi-service store, a liquor store, and stuff like that. If you think about how it ever comes to be, there's always something that makes sense about it, as far as the story and how it ends up coming to be, and how the fundings come. You know, there could be many scenarios. You know, the person that opens up the liquor store, they could already know people that have a liquor store, other family members. And so them opening up a liquor store with that kind of, you know, personal familiarity and knowing someone, it just makes it almost like more easier to do it. And so that person can pretty much come in and just literally tell you what to do in every single step, to the point where you have a liquor store and the stress and the effort wasn't really up for you because everything was heavily guided. And all you maybe had to do was find a loan, you know, and maybe they kind of hooked you up a little bit. And so now you have a liquor store, and it could just do well for you already because it's a liquor store. And so, you know, everyone tends to go there and buy it. And it just becomes a little more local for people that live closer. And so there could have been that scenario for funding and making it happen. Another scenario could have been that, you know, they've been working a great job for a while anyways. And so they had the savings. And so they were able to put a lot of little stress and interest and work into using their money. And just maybe they went through the trouble of learning ins and outs of what to get and what to do. And maybe they could have just been that person that did it that way. They didn't have anyone that they knew, and they just started like that. But they had money to play with, and so they got established that way. Another scenario could be just a well-off family member, well-off parent. They're doing so good, and so as far as money goes, and it being a business, they were most likely able to get the money to make this happen. And through the well-off parents, they're probably knowledgeable in other things, were probably able to get help in some way getting paperwork done. And so something gets built that way. There's that scenario. Another scenario could be if you grew up always being about, being socially involved in groups and programs and stuff like that. And so you evolve in your adult life to take higher and higher roles, and you start doing more. And, you are a person that is always interlinking with other connections and people. And then you keep that going and going. Eventually, you probably are going to evolve to be some sort of, good speaker. You're going to be some sort of head person that people know, and, you're going to be in some sort of credible position, especially you did this. And so let's say you wanted to start a business, over time with the programs you've joined and the stuff you've done, most likely you have some sort of income coming that is not so bad. And so you're earning good money, and you're interlinking well with people, and you're just this guy or woman, whatever. And so now you want to start a business. Because of the people and stuff like that, you're somehow able to come to this point where people, and you want to start something, and then there's people that know people that help you put you on. And so it's almost as if you're almost like having an easy time adjusting yourself to a new position and do something else. And not only that, but you have the money. And so I think that aligned together, having the money and just the flexibility to move around because of the money, and having these connections, and also having the interest, it tends to be more clear that a business would come in that you start, and maybe you invested in it, and then maybe you're running something with a buddy. And so you end up pretty much having a business where you're running a business with like-minded people that are more of your buddy than anything. And you're living a life where the ecosystem you're living in is all about some sort of chain of holding hands, where it almost feels like it's just constantly a buddy helping a buddy, and then it just makes it more easier. And not only that, but you tend to have buddies that are just in that right position of making, pivotal points, like, having a buddy that's a lawyer, maybe having a buddy that already has their own business and do stuff, or maybe having a buddy that they're doing something at a big scale that's kind of what you're doing. And so, he has decent people in other work-related professions, and so people get thrown at you that are crucial, believe it or not, and create these opportunities. And so one can almost say that that person is lucky, very lucky. But if you think about it, all that I said, if you've been wondering how things start, it's stuff like that. And so if you're wondering how you're going to make something happen at a big scale where you're doing good and, maybe getting some sort of prestige, and you're just wondering how you make some sort of breakthrough like that with income. You just have to know that as far as steps goes, it's going to be clear. It's going to be common sense. It's just that things could feel a little discouraging because earning money tends to be a very complicated thing, and it really is complicated. And that's why when there's a successful business going on and stuff like that, or successful people in business, one tends to almost have a doubtful wondering about how in the world someone's able to do that and do well with it. And you just have to always just look at the fact of how it started. And then you have to think about whether or not you have anything aligned to how that came to be as far as income goes and just the overall type of person that you are. Those are the kinds of things you have to look at, to keep in mind and wonder about. And, for example, if you want to start some sort of Amazon of some sort, you have to think about whether or not you really want to even do that. Do you want to have a website? Like, for real? Well, most likely if you're someone that wants to do that, you're probably going to end up more sooner than later. You're going to end up most likely at least fidgeting with creating a website for a while. Even if at some point you close it down and never have anything to do with a website again, if you're thinking about it, most likely you're going to end up making a website and fidgeting with it. And so, as far as things evolve, you fidgeting with that website, even if you never do anything with it, because you fidgeted with that, most likely you're going to end up fidgeting in other areas that feed the type of personality you are. It's like you got into website, you did that. Okay, so now what's next? Maybe you decide to, I don't know. It's just, the point is that depending on the situation, you're going to take a different route. Because maybe you may not have the finances. You may not have the finances, but you're going to be figuring out something. And you're going to be figuring out something that you're going to land on something that you're going to be doing well at, that's going to be related. Even if it's taking a new position at a job, it's going to be the same thing. Because if you're all about trying to grow at a job and get new positions, and you're trying to stay at a job for as long as possible, then in your world, in your ecosystem of life, that's how you're going to be successful. Because now you're going to be at a job and you're going to seek higher jobs. And then, you're going to be at a job and you're going to get paid more over the time. And then you're going to just be in a new position. And then now you're going to be earning maybe about 40 to 50, maybe a little more $1,000 a year. And then that could be your thing. But either way, as far as starting something, it's going to take some sort of lineage, a common sense lineage of you being someone in the natural world, figuring out what to do, and then you find something, and then as far as the scalability goes, that has to be looked at. And it's no surprise how some things come to be. It's just a matter of whether or not you're someone that cares about doing this type of thing and just interested. And another thing is, too, is I'm going to use a term. I'm going to say it right now, but another thing is when it comes to like great success and the scalability of things, a lot of people tend to be babied in to the thing. People get babied in, and so with being babied in, you're pretty much having training wheels. Training wheels into a path of a scalability where you're going to be earning great money. Or at least be good in the natural world, And so with being babied in, that is pretty much getting opportunities almost like given to you, especially opportunities that are very like substantial, babied in. Let's say, even for instance, you're going to be a stand-up comedian. Let's say you want to do stand-up comedy. Let's say this is you. I mean, it's a very odd job. It's a very unique thing. And let's say this is this is your personality. You want to do stand-up comedy. And so, you're doing stand-up and you're doing clubs and stuff like that. Or maybe you just start with training and stuff like that. So you're doing stand-up and this is what you're doing. So for sure, this is something you want to do if you're already doing and performing, getting that experience, learning what people boo at, what people laugh at, and you're getting better. And so as you gain more access to other clubs, you can get opportunities into bigger things. And then you could be performing at a club where someone who is more known is going to be doing their thing. And so that person, could take note of you. They notice that you're doing really funny, that you are really funny and you're doing great. This person can take you under their wing in some way. And so at that point, you are getting babied into something. You're getting some sort of upper hand, some sort of wing to do better. It doesn't mean you will be doing good, but as far as, maybe this guy hooking you up for a spot goes to do something, you can get babied in that way because of those opportunities. And either way, no matter what type of thing you're doing, even if you're going to be taking acting up roles, for a movie, doesn't matter the situation. It's still going to be a matter of being like the right person for the job. You're going to have to be selected. You're going to have to be given the opportunity. Someone's going to have to make a choice of whether or not you're going to be this. Because you could be fit, you can look amazing, you can be really handsome, you can be beautiful, but you may not be selected for that role in that movie simply because you don't represent that tone, you don't represent that vibe. And so you may not be selected for such a role. And it just goes to show that, when it comes to ever wondering how, the success comes, or, the type of scale, you have to look at the reality and the factors that come into play. And the fact that a lot of people may have gotten babied in. And the type of lifestyle already someone lived that leads to one thing. For example, someone that has lived a life of hardship, may have taken such extreme measures that they've had their mind wired to, maybe go to college and deal through all the aches of college, and then through college and having the mindset and maybe holding a good job, transition into being CEO, and then transition into having their own thing. You know, they just had to do that. And so, as far as wondering, well, how does someone become a CEO to such a big corporation? It's only that. It's only the fact that you are having interest. You may have been working office jobs, and overall your personality is, as far as if you were to acknowledge how you're moving, it's not that you are moving to be better than anybody. It's just that happens to be your life. It's a life. And so you're doing this. And so if you're wondering how people come to be, it's that. And so if you're looking from the outside in, wondering how you could be CEO, you want to be CEO. Okay, well, how could you possibly be a CEO? Right now, at some point sooner than later. How could you? You ever wonder that? Well, you have to figure it out. Most people that become CEOs tend to have already been some sort of head manager for a while at a firm. They have some sort of accounting background, and so they've been some sort of firm lead accountant, senior, and so they've been doing that. They're good with numbers, they do good with stocks, and they know all about investing, and so they took a share into something, and so boom. So are you going to become an accountant? How are you going to become a CEO? Are you going to be what can you be doing to possibly become a CEO? It has to only become through a path of doing that. Maybe you start your own business. Maybe you start your own website, and your website start earning good money. At that point, you can call yourself a CEO. As far as it's your money dropping into what you're investing, right? So you can, at that point, give yourself that kind of title. But either way, that's just how things tend to be. And so being babied in is very fortunate. Having somehow coming across knowing people is very fortunate. Not a lot of people know people that have a liquor store. And that's a close buddy, maybe a buddy you grew up with. No one tends to have someone that they know that's a good buddy that has their own physical business that you hang out with, that have this physical business, that you could just talk to them about it. And so you're thinking about starting something, or maybe a similar thing, and then they pretty much almost baby you in to being able to do this. It's almost think about it like a video game. A video game where you need certain resources in order to make this magical, strong weapon. And without it, things are a little more challenging. But these are the things it takes. And maybe for these things, it takes a lot of hard work to obtain these items. And it takes just a lot of work, a lot of hours in to put it into play. And, and so you figure out a way to get it easier. And let's say someone in the game hooks you up with the weapon or the resources, and then you make the weapon. And so you didn't have to do so many missions and so much running around. And so that comfort was already there. And so now you are slashing and gaining more points ahead of time. It's the same thing with a lot of opportunities. Even if you're going to be publishing a book, it's just going to take a lot of resources and time and energy. And so that publisher, that if you just somehow publish that book and you get published right away, that's more fortunate. That is very fortunate versus, going through hundreds of publishers and none of them do publish you, and then feeling like you wasted your time and you feel like you got junk, and so maybe by the 400th time you get published, that would have been more useful if it was the first publisher you went to. You know what I'm saying? And so the point I'm trying to make is, when it comes to pivotal moments like that, and wondering how things come to be, it's those types of situations. And so you may not have any of that coming into play, and you may not have certain interests, but you just have to be aware when you have these certain interests, what certain things you have into play, and then figure out a way to start scaling, and then realize that you could make it in certain areas and that it is possible, but you just have to be realistic with what's being taken into play and whether or not you can afford this moment and how comfortable you feel. Because if you're going to start a business off purely loans and you have no savings and no good income, things are going to be more stressful and harder for you, and you're going to be more frustrated in trying to do your business well versus someone who's already had great savings and are just taking out a loan as a little bit of a leverage and are just flowing through it versus trying to do something on edge. You know what I'm saying? Because at that point, if you're going to be working on edge, it's just going to be a little more extreme for you. And so that's going to be more difficult. And so what I'm trying to get at is, when it comes to the scalability of whatever it is you're doing, there's just factors that tend to always exist, that it could be different, but either way, if you just think about it, it's always the same type of thing. The lineage of how things tends to be like common sense. It's just, it makes sense. Starting first off with the interest, you need to have the interest first. And then from then on, you just have to look at things as the type of lineage, the next lineage for the next thing. And there could be many paths of lineages, but either way, there could be many points on the map. But either way, it doesn't have to be in order. You know, this point, that point, that point. It could just be a string of orders. But either way, when we look at what each point is, it's a point that tends to feed another thing. And it all starts with the interest. If you have no interest in being someone that is an actor, you have no interest in doing reality TV shows and appearing in reality TV shows, being a participant, then you will not be this person on TV show doing these sorts of things. You know, so if you take this path of always applying for gigs and applying for the acting roles, this and this role, then you will not be this person that is known to be this person on TV to do these things. It takes that type of lineage to do that. And so even if you decide to take this interest today, right now, just out of pure interest, it will still apply for you to being that person that ends up doing that. Versus someone that has zero interest and decides not to take that. And you can't say, well, that person does not want to be successful because they didn't take this path. You know, obviously, if you're taking these roles and you end up getting to be the lead host of a TV show, and you're going to be getting paid good money per episode, if you're not interested in that, you're not going to be that person. And so you could be successful in doing that TV show. You know what I'm saying? And so, but either way, even if you're this person that takes these gigs roles and tries to apply to get it, you already may be coming in with the energy to do this and focus. So when you do these auditions, you're probably going to get selected for it. You know, I mean, you're really trying to get it, and this is the type of person you are and what you want to do. And so, as far as giving the motivational speech for work ethic goes, you could tell someone to work hard, but for certain things, you have to be a different type of motivational speech for it. For example, if you want to do these acting roles, then it's as far as the motivational push for them, it'd just be like, hey, keep acting, keep doing more and more acting roles, get training, maybe join local theaters, they would recommend. And so you do these things, and that is what makes you better, and then you get selected. And then as you get better, because you even seek a lot of training on the side, when it comes down to audition and you do the movies, you're going to be great because you train yourself to look believable. But either way, the biggest point out of everything I said is that it's going to take the interest. You have to be interested in it. And then it just takes in, it's just what thing leads to the other. Having that interest first and then doing this or whatever it is, and then one thing leading to the other. And one of the biggest discouraging things is looking at the success rate and the scalability of one thing versus the other. One could think one is more majorly successful than the other, and it could be true. But it's just that if we look at how one even got there, it's just common sense. And if you have zero interest, then you will not be that. You can't force yourself to do that for the sake of nothingness. Even if it were for the money, it's just you still wouldn't be doing it. You wouldn't be becoming an actor just for the money, knowing that you have no desire and just not comfortable around people and doing stuff like this. It's not your thing. So one can almost say that you have it more easy when you are already into this. Because if you're going to do these things, then it's not going to feel challenging. You're not going to feel shy. You're just going to look forward to really putting a great performance. And that's all you're going to care about. And so it's more fortunate for somebody to be highly interested in something and always be fidgeting with things like that, and then go to a new level. It's always more easier for people like that. Like if you're going to be a stand-up comedian, it's going to be more easier for you to be at the biggest stage of your life if you're a stand-up comedian, because it involves being on stage, being looked at by a lot of people, and possibly look like an idiot. And so obviously, the bigger places you do, it's just going to be more better. I mean, especially if you're going to be doing more hot spots, and you purposely are applying to these spots and getting these spots, you're going to be bumping in, obviously, to other bigger people, because that's what they do too. They go to places and apply and trying to get the gig. So obviously you want to be on a better path, and then that's how you become successful. And it could be in business, it could be anything. It can be in trying to become a CEO. It could be trying to become, mayor, governor, whatever. It's the same thing. From the outside looking in, there is no lens. There is no magical portal to cross over. It's obvious. If you want to become a pop star, it's obvious that most likely you want to become a pop star and do pop star things. And even if you're not at a high level, you're still at A level. And so it's only your best interest to obviously make a great hit. And it's what I'm trying to say is it's very simple. It's very simple. It's just that if you have no interest, there is no points to string out to anything. There could only be points set out on the map that is who you are and your personality. You know, you're not going to have points on the map being random and not add up, because at that point you're just going to be probably crazy. You know, I mean, are you going to be someone that is trying to have a restaurant and then also wants to be a scientist and also wants to be a BMX rider, you know, doing bike tricks, / you want to be snowboarder, you know, and be known for that? Like, you can't have much of a mess of things. Everything's going to always be a balance of things. If you ever look at how things are for other people, it's always a balance. It's not real exaggeration of what's going on. It's just a common sense balance. And so nobody should feel discouraged about their path and what they're going to make and where they're going to go, because it's just going to be a very common sense thing. So nothing's really a surprise if you look at what happens. It's just that you have to look at the factors into play and figure out at least what small bit of factor you have. Whether it's a similar one or maybe it's a different thing, but considering the factors at play, and then build up the factor list as the factors you will look up that you found out from looking at how another did it or what took place. Look at those factors and build in factors to build things. And so that's what I'm trying to say. And so it's a lot of times you may not have those resources and factors into play that make an easy step or being babied into happenings. And so that could be a slow thing for you in your rate and timing of success. But as you build up factors subconsciously, you're building up factors. I'm just bringing it up to realize that. But subconsciously, you're looking for factors. And you're aware of the factors. And that's how you're able to take steps, is the factors into play build up a comfort to move. Like the factor of knowing you have the good finances, the good money. So if you take these jumps and investments, you still have money to move around and be comfortable. It's not like you're working at a tight situation and you're stressing out about bills. You probably have a lot covered. And so this thing that you're doing is like a buttery thing. And so that's what I'm trying to say, to add factors and just be aware of the other factors into play for other things, and just realize how simple it is and how lineage it is. You just have to figure out a way where you're kind of doing similar relevant things and just understanding like just the reality of things. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. Is there isn't much mystery. It's just the only mystery is not knowing. But once you realize the factors, it only makes sense. And so, you know, because it's really difficult to succeed in this economy, very, very difficult. So looking at the factors and realizing the true nature and the true factor can give you the better sense of whether or not you have something to play with and how, you know, the factors in play. You know, you may not have well-off parents throwing you money. So that could be a factor you lack. And that's just could be the factor you lack. But you start adding to the factor list of what you're doing, those factors make sense. They are what drive the thing. They're like batteries, energy cells to creating an outcome. And so that's the end of the podcast, is just discussing that and just looking deeply at how things tend to come to be, and that there is no surprise. It's just some people may have had these things into play, and then what builds up ends up being a fortunate ecosystem for themselves. And that things are no surprise. You just need to be interested in something. Not everyone's interested in drawing canvas art, but somebody is, and someone will do really well with canvas art and probably make more money than anyone else doing other professions. And that is just a reality. And so, yeah, just don't worry about your scalability and timing yet. Just realize things and just take things into consideration, and just don't worry, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Hope it made sense. And it was just a piece of reality I felt like I had to talk about, because it's something one could subconsciously wonder about, how things are and how things work and where you are in the map, drives a lot of things. And so was trying to lay out that you don't have to be so discouraged, and everything could be fine. And you just have to explore your thing and be patient, and just really just look at the factors. So yeah, that's the end of this podcast. Stay tuned for more topics. There's going to be different kinds of topics that are good, like this one, that dive into things. And yeah, that's it for today, and goodbye.